Hello, listeners. Welcome to another People and Dancefloors podcast. My name is Anthony and talking to you once again, all the way from Cairo in Egypt. For those of you that have listened to the first episode of the People and Dancefloors Egypt podcast, you will have heard that in the last episode that I've sort of been trying to figure my way through the puzzle work of clubs and substances and all of the various different things about Cairo that we've been talking about to some extent in the People and Dance Floors podcast back in the UK. But I really wanted to explore in more depth in this particular social, cultural, and geographical context. So this will be episode 2 of that podcast. And I'm joined today in that particular odyssey by someone who's swiftly becoming a partner in crime, Yusha Charles, music journalist.
Hello there, guys. Back again. Lovely to be with you.
And today we are going to be talking to DJ, producer, events curator, and music journalist K LAFF, aka K LAFF.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here. Was good.
Thanks very much for joining us, guys. So, you obviously tick a lot of boxes with those 4 titles that I've just given you. So, it would seem as if, in order to make a living as a DJ or a producer out in Cairo, you have to sort of dip your toe into all of these other different aspects, like events curation, as you say. Would it be possible, because I know it's also difficult in the UK and probably in countries all over the world, to make a living as a DJ or producer in Cairo, not just as of any kind of music, any perhaps more popular music, but in particular as a very niche form of DJ producer like jungle, because it's not as popular out here as it is in the UK. So
I mean, the problem is always with it's volatile. You never know how the month is gonna go, especially when you play something niche. You're not part of the commercial music scene where you can easily make 10K per party, as opposed to the underground when you make an average of 2 to 3K per party. And yani, our events range from like 3 to 4 events per month, and that encapsulates all party series, like 4, 5, 6 party series that play these niche and underground sounds. You can only find 3 events per month, which is nothing compared to like other places. Um, we don't have much venues, so that's always a problem. Um, People find it hard to throw a party because you always have to look into weird spaces and then turning them into a venue, a warehouse, which is always the go-to, or like just a big hall in a random club, not a nightclub, but like a social club where you have like a big hall where you can throw an event or a party. So it's always tough staying consistent and making a proper living. The past couple of months, I've been trying to like do music full time as a DJ and a producer. It makes enough money to withstand the month, but it doesn't make enough to for me to travel, for me to save up for equipment or save up for anything actually. So it's always like you never know what the month is offering. You know.
one of the things I think we should specify when you say 2 to 3K is that we're talking about Egyptian pounds, right?
Yeah, 2 to 3K Egyptian pounds, which is like 150, 100 British pound,
Yeah.
100. I think it's $100 or
Yeah, at the
something.
moment, it's $100.
Yeah,
One of the things that I find really interesting about that is, number one, it's kind of shitty because you're beholden not only to kind of local forces but also global kind of economic factors because of the way, the state of the Egyptian pound. So, is that something that I would imagine you have to constantly think about and adjust to as a even just a cultural worker in Cairo?
of course. There's always, yani, the same way music is volatile. That economic state is always volatile. You don't know when the currency is increasing or decreasing. So it just like now more than ever prices increase, but the fees do not increase because the money increase on the organizer. Yeah, the venue rent increased, the speakers increased a lot, renting out everything increased. So now it's very limited for the organizer to give more money, as opposed to maybe I won't say 2 years ago, 1 year ago, where you can negotiate your fees and get more. But now it's very tough for everyone, for DJs, for organizers, for the venue, for
This might sound like a familiar thing to a lot of DJs, producers back in the UK. The price of everything goes up, but the wages don't go up with it.
nope.
Yeah, makes sense. It's kind of like the copy and paste format, I think, in the industry, like on a global level. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. So you mentioned lack of venues in that in what you were saying there. Is it? Am I right in thinking that okay? It struck me as when I go to somewhere like Bristol or Liverpool. Obviously, my background is the UK. If a DJ wants to play, they've got a range of different options to pick from because of these static spaces that already exist, and in many cases have existed for a very long time. But in Cairo, it's a little bit different because you have to find and develop your own very short-term space that perhaps will only exist for that night. Is this why you think it might be that so many people working as DJs and producers in Cairo also dip their toe into events curation and organization?
Yeah, exactly. That's the point, because you do not have option. You don't have. Yani, if we're talking realistically, we only have one proper nightclub, and then you have something that's like a sports bar slash club, but not much, and the rest are just resto bars, or like restaurants and bars, which aren't really clubs. They just play like the really super commercial radio hit. Sorry, they just play the radio hits, the really known stuff. People don't go for the music. People just go for the if it's a birthday, if it's like an after wedding, but proper nightclub and like a clubbing musical ravey experience. It's only one club, which is very limiting, and that club has two venues, and they only give the underground sound one night per week. So you don't have any options at all to make money, to play around. So to expand as a DJ, and here we don't have tours, and it's not like in Europe where you're like boom and then you start touring around other cities or other countries or whatever. Here it's just you have to throw your own events and curate your own parties and start your own thing to really up your game in the music scene, to start competing and creating your own identity and getting people from abroad, so you get more known regionally and internationally.
I mean, it's definitely its tragedy, but it's also its blessing in a way, because with the lack of, as you said, like venues, it does force people to put on their own things, which is for me a lot more interesting, a lot more cooler. I personally would rather go to an underground event in someone's rooftop somewhere than go to a venue any day of the week. You know what I mean? So I think it's got its negatives, but like in musical terms, I guess it also has its positives as well.
I mean, the fun thing about it is it pumps up creativity in the party. So everyone wants to stand out. So people just, whatever space they can find, they try to make the most out of it. So it's always like a fun experience going to a new place or a similar place and seeing what's being, what difference being offered, or what are they doing with the space, how did they decorate, what are they using, what lights, what's the sound system like. So it's always an exploration going to these kind of parties where you just don't know what you expect. Because with clubs, you know the club, you've been there before, you know the staff if you're a frequent. But with these kind of things, you go and just like, whoa, this is really cool, or whoa, this is really empty.
It's almost like that lack of having a traditional venue or a traditional space is fertile ground, because you have to involve so many different other aspects and different artists in the development of that space, as you say, lighting, sound equipment, all of that kind of stuff. So maybe this is what is actually beneficial, or at least helpful, or at least facilitates the kind of quote unquote DIY development of a quote unquote scene. And sorry to the listeners, I am going to have to continue using that term scene as we go through, even though I don't like it myself. What else do you call a group of people with a common interest around a very niche type of music, and how that sort of flourishes in a place like Cairo. I don't know. So, do you find that there is an increasingly large audience for that kind of niche music, for things like jungle music, for example, in Cairo?
I feel like the past 2 years, especially, there's been a huge rise in the audience. Um, yeah, and back in the day, there were like party series that were like the forefront, and they used to play like kind of minimal housey music. But now, and the DJs especially, like back in maybe 2019, if you listen to the overall sound of that underground, you're gonna find it's mostly minimal or breaks.
Mhm.
It didn't go over the jungle kind of the underground UK sounds of drum and bass, footwork, juke, hard drum, UK bass, all of these. Um, Now you have diversity in the DJs themselves. So now everyone wants to stand out from the current wave of new DJs. So you found everyone just digging through new sounds, digging through new genres. In the past, yeah, 2022 produced maybe 12 really good new DJs to the scene who play original music. Some play dub, some play jungle, some play footwork and juke. Some people play really underground sounds. Like there's this genre called Soundy. I think it's Finnish psytrance, which is something they have their unique sound. So now it's yeah, and people are getting more awareness to the variety of music, because also the audience, especially in Egypt, they don't try to explore. Yeah, you're gonna find the commercial clubs full, and the underground events 100, 200, 300 people. If you get 400, you're a really successful party. So it's all up to the DJs, I feel, because DJs at the end of the day they educate the crowd. And I remember the first time I played jungle, juke, and footwork, because I think no one in Egypt plays footwork, but some play jungle and some play juke. The first time I played that, people came up to me and like, "Yo, I don't know what music this is, but I love it," and I felt like that was the best thing I've ever heard, because it felt like I was educating people on new genres and new sounds than the ordinary tech house melodic kind of go to, you know.
Do you find that that's changed over time as well, Yusha? You've been working as a music journalist in Cairo for 12, 13 years, is it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I've been out here for a little bit now. But yeah, no, I've kind of felt the same thing as well, and I will agree with what Khalaf said. Over the past 2 years, there's definitely been an explosion of newer DJs, doing different things, and essentially crate digging and going through genres and stuff like that. I remember, yeah, you were mentioning footwork. There was also like Romanian house as well that got big as yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of been going on. Like very much so before that, you got melodic stuff. There was a lot of more rap nights, more hip hop nights as well. But now that's like people who went to those nights have realized that the from what I can see that the standardized club format isn't the way to do it. So they will drop off and come into the underground, and they'll start going to events where they know that the DJ is going to play everything, but you're going to hear rap, you're going to hear hip hop, you're going to hear drum and bass, jungle, dub, all usually from the same DJ. So it is really like a musical education for a lot of people, especially the younger party goers that are coming to the underground parties now as well.
So it's a bit of a melting pot. I mean, one DJ, as you say, won't play a particular genre of music, but will play like everything. And then, who are the audiences that go to these kind of parties? Do you find? I'm guessing, mostly young people. Is there a connection between the DJs, producers, the venues, and let's say the colleges and the universities? And how does that kind of come into play?
Um, I'm not sure how to reply to it. Yeah, you mean direct relationships between unis and parties, or
So, for example, yeah, I mean, you could say something like that. Yeah. For example, it's often the time that a university in the UK will have some kind of connection to a venue. Usually, those parties are quite shit, but there is a relationship that's there. Or is it the case that, for example, you guys might have gone to a university or a college and developed this kind of particular sound and interest with your friends there, and it ends up becoming a culture within the university itself.
um I know my experience with university because I minored in music technology. So I was dealing with a lot of musicians and like music snobs that listen to the underground and niche kind of music and look up to the commercial music as, oh my god, no. Um, but direct relation, I feel like not really. It depends on the student because universities don't have connections with clubs much. Um, Maybe with some of the um, n- commercial clubs, but
Mm.
not directly. It's always like maybe the student union has a connection with that place. They do the after grad there or something like that. But educating university people on music, it's always how they perceive music themselves. And you always just go around inviting over your friends. You're gonna find some people, hey, I'm down. I love this music. Hey, I'm down. I'm down to like explore. And then you have other people, you don't know that this music is like too extreme for me. No, I'm not a party person. I don't like rave music or like
Mm.
electronic music. It all depends on the person themselves. I feel like universities and like colleges here don't affect much the party.
Don't really have that kind of connection. It's interesting that you mentioned music education as well, and the different kind of music education that might take place out here in Cairo compared to different countries, anywhere in the Middle East or other parts of the world. Is it a bit more traditionally conservative oriented? Is that something you would?
I mean, yeah. Overall, if we're gonna talk about the general idea of the country, yeah, it's conservative. But besides being conservative, um, this reminds me of a conversation I was having with a friend who used to live in France, and then I was asking him about why do you think people in France or in Europe they listen to much more music than we do in terms of diversity, not in terms of like quantity of music. He's like, okay, so he used to live in Paris. He told me in Paris you have like more than 200, 300 clubs, or maybe more than 1,000 clubs. I don't know the number, but you have more than 100 club at least for sure.
More than Egypt, anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
by definition.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
course.
As
So
we've just discussed, right?
he told me like per in the weekend you have like 10 simultaneous parties,
Yeah.
and then every party has a different sound, so you have the option to explore every time a new club with a new genre with new DJs. He don't have the luxury here. It's always like 6 parties per month, 4 parties or 3 parties commercial, and then 3 parties that are like underground, so you don't have the option to explore much. The parties are expensive. The entry is not that cheap. Yeah, I remember the most expensive ticket I paid in Europe, which was in the best, dubbed the best club in Barcelona and the best sound system in Barcelona, was for 20 euros, which isn't that. Here you pay 600,000, 2,000
Yeah.
to enter a party, which is like a month's salary worth for some people.
For some.
Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Especially those like, well, I mean, it's kind of the same globally, but like especially those like New Year's types of parties.
Yeah.
Like I've seen ticket prices for like 2,000 Egyptian pounds, which for like arguably 70% of the population, that's a large chunk of someone's salary for a night out. That doesn't include drinks prices. That doesn't include like literally that's to get your foot through the door. So what you kind of see is very much, it's like a class thing. It's essentially a class division, forced class division. So they increase the ticket prices knowing that a certain class of people aren't gonna even look at that type of thing. You see what I mean? Yeah, that's definitely kind of how I view that situation.
It's interesting to talk about things like club culture in terms of class, in terms of finance. I mean, do you find that a lot of the lower class people in Egypt don't really attend the kind of those sorts of events?
No, they don't. But you do have Mahragan.
You do have Mahragan, and then there's this. So there's this another niche underground scene, but most of us are not in tune with it. It's for I know I don't want to call it like that, but it's not for the lower class people, but most of the lower class people attend these type of parties. It's more they play like mostly progressive house and maybe dark melodic. They have their own crowd. They're also niche in their own right. You also have the psytrance community. They're also maybe a group of 100 people, very closed on themselves. I don't know much of them. I maybe know like one person. So you have, what's funny? You have a lot of niche scenes in Egypt, and you don't really know all of them or most of them, but you see a random post of a party in Egypt. You don't know the lineup, you don't know anything, but it's just like a nice party happening. Not nice for me, not my type of music, but it's nice for that type of audience.
It's funny that you mentioned the psytrance community of 100 people. I really enjoyed that.
I don't want to talk about psytrance, but I really want to talk about it.
The 2 nights that I've come into contact with in Cairo so far, and I'm sure there are many more I hope to go to quite soon, are Mushtaruk and Jelly Zone, right? I wonder what kind of difficulties they face, or what kind of difficulties you yourself have faced, Khalaf, in organising an event like this. Let's think specifically about legality, for example. Is that something that comes up whenever you're beginning to think about organising an event?
I mean, it's the first thing you have to consider because there's like it's not called a party license, but it's something like a party license. It's a fee you pay, so your party, it's like a party tax.
Yeah.
Like more than a license.
It's like there's going to be music at this volume. People are going to be out late. There will be drinks served, type of thing. So it's like it is a party tax, I guess.
Yeah, it's a party tax.
How much are we talking?
It could range from 20K till 2 million, depending on how big the artist is.
Okay, right. So, I mean, this I would imagine happens in the UK all the time anyway. When someone wants to have a big event of some sort in a venue that isn't strictly a venue, they have to go through all of these kinds of, jump through hoops, we say. Is it, do you find it's particularly, like, the authorities are particularly stringent or difficult to deal with? Like, let's say if the party's on, do they hang around? Are there people, because in the UK we get like, you might have a few police cars down the road, or in the old warehouse raves you used to have people on horseback like shutting it down, or just being everywhere, being present, being annoying, pissing everyone off. But I've not seen any of that since I've been out here, and from what I've heard previous to moving out here, or Egypt's this or Egypt's that, Egypt's very authoritarian or something like that, but to the image I've seen so far has been the complete opposite of that, especially compared to the UK parties that I've been to.
I mean, here, if a police shuts down a party, it's not going to be a raid. Yeah. It's just going to be a simple conversation. Hey, you need to shut down this party. Now. And we're always responsive. We don't want like a problem, or we have people upstairs. We care for their safety. People are just however they are. It's safe. These kind of parties should be a safe environment for everyone joining. So it's always just a case of, hey, it's either you turn down the volume or you have to shut down the party.
And we're not turning down the volume.
Yeah, we're not. But with the party tax, it depends on the case, but a lot of the times when you pay the party tax, there's always like a police officer at the scene. He's kind of like just watching what's happening, making sure everything is safe, everything is up to standard, and nothing is being overboard. And then now that you're okay, your party is safe and nothing is gonna happen. But sometimes the problem is with snakes in the scene. You have some people who what's the word I'm looking for?
Sabotage?
Yeah, they sabotage their friends' parties.
Yeah.
Really?
That
Are we getting into scene politics here?
I think
we're
dipping our toe into
slightly. So there was this party like a month ago, and they didn't let in one of the people who are kind of well established in the scene. They didn't let him in, so he decided to call the cops on them, and then they got fined, and then a lot of shit happened.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the best of things, and this happened also back in there was this huge party. There was this huge underground party in like a warehouse kind of vibe. One of the Marwan Pablo showed up.
Who, for our English listeners, is one of the biggest Egyptian rappers.
Yeah, he's top 3 Egyptian rappers in Egypt at the moment, or ever maybe. Marwan Pablo showed up, gave a surprise performance. The party was insane. So another salty person, because he saw that these people are making something big. They called the cops on them, and they had to pay a fine of like a 200K. Yeah, 200,000.
I remember that. And I remember the police walking in and going up to the DJ and being like, what? What do you want me to do?
So we're talking like gangs of Cairo here almost, but specifically in the scene. Why would they do that? Is it just to kind of have a larger share of the pie or the attention, or are there people for sort of, let's say, vying for leadership of this particular emerging DIY culture in Cairo?
It's always a combination of saltiness, jealousy, ego. You see someone having a better party than you, so you call the cops on them. It's mainly the party organizers who do that, honestly. Party organizers do that to each other, but DJs don't give a shit. It's either they go to the party to support, they go to the party to play, they go to the party just to explore. They don't go at all. They don't really care. It's always the party organizers who ruin for other party organizers.
Where would you guys like to see all of this going, just in terms of the development of again, the scene in Cairo? Do you think it would be better to continue on in this way, given everything that we've just been talking about, or would you like to see the establishment of a kind of static venue that people can really get behind and work towards building? What do you think would be best? What would you like?
My dream for Cairo is a lot of clubs, or if I'm being realistic, at least 3 really decent clubs. Like, I really want to see a 2-room experience in Egypt. I want to go to a place where they have 2 halls or 2 rooms or 2 different genres being played at the same time. And also, the clubs allow for more safety. You can blacklist people. You can call. You're gonna have a much more secure place with full-on security,
Effective
surveillance. Everything is prepared to manage a crisis, as opposed to like house parties or like our organized event. It's harder to deal with crisis and problems, because if you get attacked by a group of people, it's gonna be hard to like defend everything, because you didn't hire that much security. You hired like just maybe 3 people to guard the door and be there with you if stuff happen. But if shit goes way out of control, it's gonna be hard to manage, as opposed to a club where you can call the cops, you can do this, you can do that, you can solve the problem. But yeah, I feel like we have a long way to go. There's still like a lot of legal stuff that gets in the way. The alcohol license is the biggest problem, I feel like, for most clubs and venues.
It's crazy. Even, by the way, just so listeners know, that an alcohol license in Egypt is so difficult to get. And if you have, as an example, one type of alcohol, so let's say you have Heineken as a beer, that's one alcohol license. For you to get another type of beer, you have to make that license again. So it's for every single product. It's not just like one blanket thing. It's for every single product that you have. It's ridiculous.
Massive levels of bureaucratization.
Yeah, so much. And I mean, going back to what you were saying as well, like this is very much the point. Like the scene being as it is in Egypt, it is very DIY. It is very, hate using the term scene, but yeah, it is in its infancy as well. What I would like to see really is just a place that like-minded people can call their own for once, rather than going to like, the larger nightclubs and just listening to our DJs. I want a place that we can call our own, a space that we can kind of like do what we want with, rather than like having to, abide by the powers that be. You see what I mean? And then in that way, everything naturally becomes safer. Everything naturally becomes better. But it's really just like having that ability to do that thing would make things so much easier in Egypt, I think.
And most like club owners, they just play it safe, so they just play. It's always the same formula. If you go to to most clubs in Egypt, it's always like the night starts off with hip hop, and then we go into like really pop music, really the hits on the charts. And then, like, in the peak hours, they're gonna play mahraganat and shabi music. And then at the end of the party, they maybe go back to hip hop or like EDM kind of vibes. So,
Darude Sandstorm.
Classic, mate. Don't knock the rude sandstorm.
Never.
I'm leaving right now. So, given we'll kind of end on this final point, because one of the main things that interests me about this city, if you could even call it a city, 20 million people. It's projected that by 2050 is going to be 38 million people living in Cairo. Given the nature and the scale of urban development that is taking place in and around Cairo, you would think that there might be some kind of consideration for a space like this, for, let's call it, a kind of a club culture centered area. I mean, it's pretty much every city center in the UK. But I've never seen the authorities even consider developing something like that. Do you see that as a possibility, on something that may be on the horizon, or is it completely never going to happen?
I don't want to say never, because anything is possible, but as everything is being projected at the moment, it doesn't seem likely anytime soon. There's also a huge like opposition from the local, the majority of the locals.
Yeah, conservative-minded
Yeah,
local people. Yeah,
partying is a big no-no. Oh, you go to parties, what are the neighbors gonna say? What are our family members gonna say? This is not okay. This is decent people don't go partying. It's always, I don't understand why it's always a matter of decency and respect. Like, respectful people don't go partying. Respectful people don't go out late. Like, what does me coming back late has to do with my respect? I treat people respectfully. I treat everyone the same. So I don't understand what does respect has to do with anything regarding music or partying or.
Also, what's very funny as well is if you look at some of the pictures of Egypt, specifically in the 70s, I mean, there's a lot of afros and there's a lot of flared pants going on. You know what I mean? So we can't say that there wasn't like a scene culture. Everyone was dancing in discos in the 70s. You know what I mean? Everyone's parents were doing exactly the same thing. But it's the idea that we have to uphold this level of conservatism because it's what is the norm or what is better, you see?
And another problem, like I remember I had this conversation with my uncle. My uncle is a bit conservative, or like really conservative. He always had problems with my long hair, and he used to tell my dad, I don't like your son's hair. And then my dad was like, I mean, back in the 70s, you had that Elvis Presley kind of
like beard type of thing.
no, what's it
Oh,
called?
the sideburns.
Yeah, he had like the really long sideburns, which only like the hipsters did, and then you did that. So why are you opposing to the new wave of hippiness? You know,
well done, your dad. Well done, your dad. Well
yeah,
done,
for
your dad.
once he's just
But
like
it seems it's always a question of having to demonize something, whether it's the older generations or a different kind of ideology or something. Even especially in the UK, not even, there is a similar kind of, I would argue, demonization of particular types of music, of the consumption of particular types of substances, and even of particular types of venues. So I don't really see that there's a huge difference in that respect between Cairo and the UK. So, right, thank you very much for listening. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please like us on Instagram, do the whole social media thing, and we will see you guys. First of all, let me thank Yusha Charles.
Most welcome.
And K LAFF.
thank you so much for having me.
We'll try to put up some links to the work of both of you down below in the podcast, and click on that, support the cause, and see you for episode 3. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.